Behind every successful project is a story, and behind every career is a set of lessons you don't learn in a textbook. Welcome to Under the Hard Hat, Lessons Learned with ACI Young Professionals. I'm Rebecca Helt, Marketing and Events Manager at Allied Construction Industries, and I'm your series host for this podcast, created to share authentic stories and hard-won wisdom from leaders across the commercial construction industry. For our very first episode, we welcomed Erin Mignano with Turner Construction Company for a conversation with Maya Middlebrook, our very own ACI Young Professionals Committee Vice Chairman. This episode was recorded live at our kickoff event at ACI, so you'll hear the buzz of the room adding to the conversation itself that's rich, real, and full of value. Whether you're listening on your commute, at your desk, or on a job site, we're so glad you're here. Now, let's go under the hard hat.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maya Middlebrook. I am the Community Engagement Strategist for Turner Construction, and I work out of our Cincinnati office. And today, I am joined by no other than our fearless leader, Miss Erin Mignano, Vice President and General Manager. Hey, Erin. Thank you so much for being here. How would you explain the work that you do to anyone outside of the construction world?
That's a great question. It's funny because, in the course of doing business as the leader for Turner, I'm very involved in the community and a lot of different boards. And not everyone understands how dynamic and complex and difficult construction is. And the way I break it down for them is in my current role as the business leader. I am responsible for sales, for the business, for operations. And then when it comes to construction, explaining general contracting is kind of like out there for people. It's hard to sell yourself and put that elevator pitch together. But basically what I say is that we are here and we build these communities and we work with our trade partners and we facilitate building for our clients. And we help create new communities all around globe, or at least Turner does all around the globe. And in describing what I do now, since I'm not in the day-to-day of construction, it's really just describing how we do business and how we procure our business and how we basically sell Turner and our services and our professional services is what we are in as a professional service to help people reach their dreams and build their buildings.
I'm exhausted just hearing everything you just covered. So with that being said, I'm sure you've had quite the career journey. And, I've heard that you may not be a Cincinnati native. So how exactly did you end up in this role today? How did you start off with Turner? How did you get to where you were in your first career to now?
I started college as a mechanical and aerospace engineering major. That's actually what my background is in. And I loved calculus. That's why I did engineering. As I went through college, I got exposed to construction. My dad worked in construction, did all my internships in construction, and I started with Turner actually out in our Mid-Atlantic office, which is DC, Virginia, and Maryland. So I spent 22 years in that area, and I started out in the field actually as a mechanical engineer out at an airport project. I was the assistant MEP engineer, and then I rolled out into the field as superintendent. I spent a lot of time working on projects in the field, all different types of projects, all different sizes, everything from five-star hotels to schools to community buildings, headquarter fit-outs, repositioning projects, and then I kind of got into a niche with K-12 and historical renovations. Throughout my career, I spent a little bit of time in business development. I spent a little bit of time in cost to learn the finance side of our business. And I think probably one of the most impactful positions I held was actually very early on in my career, where I was a mentor protege to the general manager of our business unit in Virginia, DC, where I got to shadow him for 2 years, which really opened my eyes up early in my career to how to run the business in construction and kind of set me on this path, because at that time, in the early 2000s, even now, there weren't many women and definitely none in leadership positions. So for me, that was probably the most impactful position that I had, because it kind of, there was someone that recognized something in me that I didn't necessarily see in myself, or I didn't recognize in our industry because there weren't that many women at the time. And it set me on this path to say, oh, I could do this. I can lead this business one day. And but all the construction background that I had is what really got me prepared to be in this business. So I really focused on staying in operations and staying on projects for as long as possible before taking over interiors for Mid-Atlantic, and then finally transferring here in 2023 to take over the Cincinnati region as well as Kentucky.
That's kind of cool. I didn't actually know all that. So with that being said, as you all know, most of the people here in the room today are YPs. So, we're still very early on in our career. And early in your career, you were definitely boots on the ground. So with that being said, what are some of the projects that you worked on? What were the things that were exciting to you? What are some challenges that you also experienced on those exciting projects?
Every project that I've been a part of has been exciting. They all have different challenges. They all have different complexities. It really doesn't matter the size, whether it was like a $20 million project or a $100 million project or a $300 million project. They all were unique. Some of my favorites, though, were the ones that impacted the community the most. So when I was doing community building for nonprofits or schools, that's what I actually loved to do. They were also some of the most challenging, even though they weren't always the biggest. I'll use one specific example. We were doing a school in a very densely populated community, not a lot of room. We were building a new school around the existing school. We were maybe 10 feet from the existing school, and then we were knocking that one down. They were moving in. We had a structural design issue kind of early on in that project, and it caused us to have a 4-month delay. And we committed as a company to still turning the school over on time because the kids would have nowhere to go. And the result of that was, at the time I was a project manager, and the result of that was that my team and I worked for 90 days straight on that project to get it turned over on time. What I learned from that is that I'm never going to do that to any of my teams ever again. And we turned it over on time, and it was a great project, and it's still a great building. But after that amount of time of working every day straight without a day off, it's really taxing on you and it burns you out. But you learn a lot from that too, a lot from the challenges. You get a lot of exposure to things in the field, and we built a really strong camaraderie and team with all of us. But it taught me about how I wanted to manage in the future and things that I would want to do differently, because I wouldn't want to put a team through that ever again. So that was probably one of the most challenging projects, just from a time perspective. And I think throughout my career, every single project has something like that, right? There's extremes, and it's about how you push through it and get through it, and how you learn from the difficult times, because it makes you a stronger leader once you get later on in your career.
Raise your hand if you've ever worked 90 days straight before. Does anybody? I'm like, that is wild. As you know, I love being in K through 12 space. That's what I do in my role as a community engagement strategist. So in today's world, when you're on those projects and you're building the schools, did you ever get an opportunity to actually engage with the students or kind of welcome them into our world, or is that important to you? Do you enjoy working with the youth today?
Absolutely. I actually created our youth program in Mid-Atlantic when we started doing K-12 schools consistently. So we created an entire youth program to get these kids, K through 12, everyone can engage in construction and learn about construction. And so what we would do at the beginning of our projects is we would do a couple of unique things where we'd have art contests where the kids would design the safety sticker that every worker on the site wore. So they did a little contest internally with the school. We worked with the principal and the art teacher, and it's like, what does safety mean to you? And that's what they drew, and then we printed it for everyone that worked on the site. They also helped create the site signage, like, what is this new project? What does this new school mean to you? And then we printed it, made it our screed on the fencing. We would do regular educational type things, some of the stuff that you and our team do now with some of our kids with the gumdrop tower building and bridge building. We do interviews with the superintendents, so the kids could interview the superintendents for their school newspaper or their school media, and do all of that sort of stuff to get them exposed to our industry. And it's the most rewarding thing, because then at the end of the day, these kids, and when they walk in on the first day of school, they're really, really excited, and you see the direct impact that we have. And then hopefully one day, a few years later, you see them at college, when you're doing college recruiting and all of that, and hopefully getting more people into our industry. So it's incredibly important.
I'm going to put 30 minutes on your calendar for after the holidays. I'm definitely stealing that idea, so thank you for that. So with that being said, you've listed your favorite project, but what's your dream project? Now that you're not boots on the ground, but if you were ever back out in the field, what would be your dream project to be a part of?
I would love to do a mega job, like a over $1 billion, huge mega project. Sports would probably be preferred, but I don't know that I'd ever get that lucky. I would settle for like a data center or something like that. It's not as complicated, but a big mega job, because it's just like you're running a business unit, but it's a huge project. So Project Highlight, the LG Honda battery plant that we're building north of between here and Columbus, and at peak, we had like almost 5,000 workers on that project. I couldn't imagine, we run a pretty large business unit here, but running a project that's complex like that, that's big, that's kind of what my dream project would be if I had to go back and run a project. So.
Oh, that's really cool. So going to go a little bit more specific now. Kind of, we've heard about you, what your interests are, what you've enjoyed in your career. So what would you say is a misconception or stereotype about your area at work that you would like to dispel?
I would say there are two primary ones. One is, I think there has been a stigma over the years about entering into construction and specifically entering into the trades. And, everyone has been pushing college. And I think college is great, but college is also not for everyone. And I think that, we're in a position where we're at now where we do have a strained labor force and we don't have as many people entering the trades because of that. But it is such a good living. You get to work on really complex and awesome projects and make a good wage and have good benefits and be able to retire and have a good pension or, a good 401k and have a good, exciting life that provides a lot of opportunities. And for some people, it's also opportunities to travel and see different things and be involved in, these buildings that transform our communities. So I think that's been one stigma I think that's been out there that has discouraged people from entering into the workforce.
Yeah, I love that you called that out. That's kind of like my biggest message when I'm in classrooms of telling kids like, hey, whatever your learning style is and whatever's going to be best for you in your future, this is one of the industries where I can confidently say the sky is the limit no matter which path you do. I'm not going to say it's easy. You're going to have some early mornings. You're going to have these long days, cold winters, but it's worth it. And it can definitely provide a living and take people into a whole different realm that maybe they didn't see for themselves. So I've grown to love this industry very, very much.
And I'd say the second one is specifically being a woman in this industry. Coming up, I've been with Turner for 20 years now, and coming up within Turner, we've always been a very diverse group of people, and we've luckily grown, and we have a lot more women than we haven't had in the past. But I would say is that there's a misconception, though, that women don't want to be in the field and they don't want to be superintendents. And I think the most rewarding and the most I've learned is when I've been in the field on projects and I've been in a superintendent role. And I think now that I'm in this position, one of my obligations is making sure that when women speak up and say they want to be superintendents, is that we foster that, we grow that, and we're very intentional about how we grow their careers and that they stay in the field because that's what they want and not be swayed by stereotypes of having a family and this, that, and the third. So that's my second stereotype to be dispelled, is that women enjoy being in the field, they want to be in the field, and we need to keep fostering that.
Yeah, I would say I've been very fortunate to come into this industry early on in my career and have so many powerful women around me. I know Turner Cincinnati, at least, we have some great female representation. Also, shameless plug to my supervisor, Kristen Smith and Voltaire, who has just shown me and taught me absolutely everything. But having Erin join the team was absolutely instrumental, and I definitely think it kind of changed the tone of some of the women in the field, and it was great to see such a wonderful, smart, and powerful woman in your position. So thank you for that. With that being said, what would you like more people to know or understand about your line of work?
I think the main thing about construction is that it's ever changing and it's very dynamic. So it's not a job that you will ever get bored in. I feel like I when I came into the industry, I was like, okay, I could go and do design, I could go to work for a client or an owner, I could go into construction, and the best part about being in this industry is that I've been on all different types of projects. They've all been different. I've worked with so many different teams and so many different types of people and trades and learned so much. So I think that's been the key. And each project is so different. Like when you're creating your schedule and your logistics plan and doing all the sequencing and figuring out how do we take something that's on paper and turn it into something real that's buildable, that we also don't have to come back and fix a lot after the end of it. I think that's one of the things I enjoy about this industry, and that I think people should know, because coming into this industry, it's always hard to find people that want to go into construction management or be a general contractor or work with our trade contractors. And it's just exciting, it's complex, it's complicated, and it's a lot of fun.
For those who are, a little bit less familiar with the commercial construction process, can you explain how a project is actually bought out?
Sure. Maybe I'll start first with how do we actually win projects?
That is true. That's a good point.
And then we can talk a little bit about procurement and bidding of our trade contractors. So in the position that I'm in now, a lot of what I do deals with our sales and our strategy and what do we want to go after, what do we want to chase, and how do we do it. The nuts and bolts of it are, though, that there's typically a two-step process with most of the proposals that we chase. A lot of the things that we pursue, though, we start pre-selling years in advance. Like 2 years in advance is probably pretty typical when we know about big things that are coming out. So it's a long, drawn-out process to even get to the RFQ and the RFP process. So we start with, okay, we identify something that we think we want to chase or we want to pursue. We develop a zipper of relationships, like who knows the client and at what levels do we each have to interact with these folks, and what is the strategy to interact with the client, with the architects, or whoever has the relationship for the projects. And then once we get further down the line, there is usually a formal process where a client will issue an RFQ, which is all of our qualifications. You put in, hey, if you're going after a higher education project, for example, we did the UC Block 1 and Block 2, which is a dorm building. In that RFQ process, we put in our team with their resumes, all the similar projects that they have to that project, and all of the projects that we've done as Turner, usually in the location that we're in, of what are similar projects. And then from the RFQ process, they usually shortlist you. And so the most qualified contractors get shortlisted, and then you get an RFP. And then the RFP, in many different ways, has different pricing components to it. So you get a little bit deeper into the plan, the schedule, the logistics. How do you plan to actually build this project with the team that you have? And then how much is it going to cost the client from a cost of services perspective? So like your general conditions, your staff costs, sometimes general requirements, insurances, and then what are we going to earn as our fee on the project? And then you typically will go through an interview process. They score everything up, and then you're awarded or not awarded a project. When we get into, once we're awarded the project, there may be a pre-construction period that we have where we're doing estimates for a client, or there just may be a bidding period that we have. And what we end up doing, at least the process at Turner, is we put together our scopes of work, our pre-construction, our procurement folks that we have, and then as well as our operations folks, they'll put together scopes of work. We put the project out to the market to bid, so to our trade contractors. We'll receive pricing, and then we'll go through a series of meetings where we try to level the scopes, because you'll get a price from someone and it may not be apples to apples with what we've asked to be priced, and it may not be apples to apples with what the other bidders have priced as well. And we'll go through a scope review meeting, we'll level out all the bids, we'll make a recommendation to the client of who we're going to use, whether it's a best value procurement, which means that it's a combination of qualifications and price, whether it's a low bid, so just low cost with all the scope. And from there, that's how we award our subcontractors. Now, the caveat is that there's also a pre-qualification process that anyone that works for Turner has to go through. So you have to be financially viable. You have to have certain financials, the company does. Your safety record, specifically your recordable incident rate, has to be a certain level to work with us. And then any of your capacity and manpower issues. So we look at the backlog of our trade partner to see how much work does this person or this company have going on during the time of this project, and will they have the proper workforce to accommodate this project. So we look at a whole bunch of different aspects, not just necessarily the scope of work, but ultimately it's the full scope of work for the best price and the most qualifications. And then we'll award a subcontract on that.
Thank you for walking us through that. So, on behalf of everybody here, I'm
Kind
sure
of a condensed version.
Yeah.
You get
very
technical.
technical.
You get it, yeah.
But yeah, so on behalf of everybody here, I would think that we were kind of curious. So on the GC side of things, how were you able to be a great GC early on in your career? When you're out in the field, what are some things that you did to really connect with your subcontractors and the trade partners to see them excel, but also make sure that Turner is being represented in the best way?
What served me the most when I was in the field is asking questions and being curious. Like coming out of college and even just doing some of the internships, you don't know anything, right? And you may have had some exposure to the trades and doing some things, but when you go into general contracting, you could oversee any trade. I was lucky enough that I initially was doing mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, which was sort of my comfort zone. But even then, I didn't know how all the things kind of went together and came together. So spending a lot of time in the field, getting to know the people that were putting the work in place and asking them questions, so I understood what, one, made them the most productive, two, how everything came together in the sequencing, because later on in your career, that's what's important, is how do you get everyone, how do you drive the schedule and drive the safety to make sure that you're coming together to accomplish the project. And then I think the most important piece is when someone came and asked for help or asked you to do something, you followed through and you did it, and showed that mutual respect for the people in the field. So I think that's what served me the best and how I learned the most, is just being out in the field, walk every day. We spend a lot of time learning safety, because it's also, you're learning the sequencing and how everything comes together, but then recognizing issues with safety. It's hard when you're first out there. You don't necessarily recognize if someone is in a fall hazard. Did they have their fall protection on properly? And it takes a significant amount of time, and walking with your safety manager and the subs on site and getting more familiar with all of that. It takes time. And I think when you spend the time doing that, it makes you a stronger builder as you progress through your career.
On the other side of things, for someone who may be new to the trades or first starting off their career as a subcontractor, what is some advice that you would give them to be the best partner for a GC?
I would say what has been paramount for us as Turner Construction is when the ideas and the concerns get bubbled from our trade partners, because we're generalists. We don't know everything, but the only way that we can really accomplish and do these complex projects is when the ideas are coming from our trade partners. We're incorporating that into our plan, and we're really listening and making it safer, more productive, and it's really just having a voice and using the voice and really partnering together. I'd say that's a key for us. And work hard and work as many hours as possible, because when you're young and you're out there, make your money and
that's why we're here.
Learn
Let's
as much as you can and get as exposed to different things early in your career,
So we all hear that? See something, say something, because we're all listening.
Say something, yeah.
All right, so a lot of experience there that you've just shared. So what type of managerial styles have you found to be the best and most successful in getting your team to come together?
I don't know if this is a style. This is just maybe my thing. I've found I think I've said this a million times on this podcast so far, but it's a very dynamic industry, and we work with all different types of people in all different industries. So we have our clients, we have our architects, we have our trade partners, and then even just our teams. Everyone has different backgrounds. And what I've found as I've managed more people throughout the years is that you kind of just need to meet people where they're at. And as a manager, you need to adapt your management style to the folks that you're working with so that they can be their most productive and their best self. And sometimes it's hard to recognize what people need. And so you need to talk to them and have personal connections with them and meet one-on-one. But I think the key for me and what's made me successful is adapting my management style based on what the needs of my people are.
I like that. So what would you say is the biggest difference in like maybe a smaller SPD project? And so I'll let you explain what SPD is, but working on teams that's maybe only 2 to 3 people versus being on those larger stadium projects where it could be over 10, 12 people.
So SPD is what we call our special projects division. It's typically our smaller, faster projects that we do, interior fit out. Sometimes they're new builds, but on the smaller projects, I would say sometimes it's a little bit more difficult because you don't have the support of the larger group. So when you do have a schedule that's kind of crazy and you're working weekends, it's you and one other person. So it's like, you better buckle up, here we go. And on the larger projects, but then on the smaller projects, it's easier to coordinate. It's just a couple of people that you're coordinating with day to day. The communication is a lot easier day to day. Then on the big projects with the larger, more dynamic teams, you get to share in the load a little bit more. And I guess that's the primary difference. But then you have a lot of different personalities and a lot more communication and coordination that has to happen on a day-to-day basis, and being very direct on how we manage our projects, and that communication is very important when you have a lot of people involved. And we get a lot more dialed in on like our weekly work plans and the schedule and our safety communications and the daily huddles, and making sure that we're all also preparing for any pre-task planning, especially for stuff that's pretty hazardous or that needs a very specific safety plan. On the bigger projects with more people, they're more complex, and so we have to really hone in on all of that. But there's more resources to do all of that. On the SPD projects, you still have to do the same things on the smaller projects, but there's less people, and making sure that you're raising your hand and saying, hey, maybe I need assistance from somebody that's not on this team, or to help me get a PTP across, or a safety plan, or a critical lift, or whatever it might be, and not feeling like you're on your own all the time and raising your hand and asking for help.
So you said a keyword, PTP. I'm not on the CN side of things, okay, guys? I work in the community, but I do know what a PTP is. And so when you're putting those together every day, when you're, go back to when you're boots in the ground, but PTPs, what are some best practices that you utilize and ways that you are organizing yourself and tracking the status of the project to put those together to make sure every day your team is ready to go?
So we're pretty regimented about pre-task planning. I don't know if anyone here has worked on a Turner project before, but first thing in the morning when we do our stretch and flex and our daily huddle, we basically just set the lay of the land, what's happening that day, that week, where are people working, how are we coordinating, and then we immediately split off into our pre-task planning with each of the trade partners. And the way that we do it is it's a huge board that we fill out every single day. And we go through and talk about what are the hazards of what we're doing in that day, and what are the things that we need to keep in mind. And it's an open conversation. And every Turner person attends one of our trade partners' PTPs, and we try to root out what could be the safety hazard for that day, and also what's changed from day to day. Because the most important thing is that everyone goes home the way that they came, and we don't want people to get injured. And so we're very regimented about how we do that, and it's out there and it's up, and we have daily conversations with Turner people integrated into our trade partners pre-task planning meetings.
Final question before we open it up, and we're going to kind of shift gears, make it a little bit more lighthearted for our speed round. But what is one thing that you learned the hard way that could have made your life just so much easier if you knew at the beginning of your career?
So I'll use, it's maybe not exactly answering your question, but what I will say is moving from the DC area to here, and having established myself in my career for 20 years in one place, and then moving here and knowing literally zero people. The hardest piece of that is the relationship building. This entire industry is built off of relationships. And when you move to a new place, I even think I underestimated how hard it would be to start over again. And I guess my best advice would be, in your careers as young professionals, you are meeting other young professionals in the industry. So whether they're owners reps, architects, engineers, clients, you work with other young professionals. But as you progress in your career, so will all of those people. And a lot of us stay in the industry. We may not stay at a Turner or a Skanska or, a trade partner or whatever it might be. We may end up going as an owner's rep with JS Held, or we may end up working for TriHealth directly in their construction department, or whatever it might be. But you fostering those relationships throughout your career, that may not seem like a lot, but as you progress through your career, then those people that you're around are also decision makers as they grow in their careers. And you never know what kind of sales or business that you're going to get from it later on, or if you need help on a project or whatever it might be. So fostering those relationships early on and maintaining them. And it could be something as easy as, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while, and you shoot out a text to someone or have a call or have a drink. But I'd say fostering those relationships is really important, because starting over or starting once you've gotten to a leadership position, it's kind of too late at that point. And then you're starting over again anyway. So I would say foster those relationships early on and lean on each other. And as you grow, you never know where people may end up or where people are in their careers later on in life.
So what I'm hearing is that everybody in this room should tell all of their friends that are also their peers at the company to attend all of our wonderful ACI YP events here in the future coming up. We've got one in January, I believe. So I also want to call out, you mentioned that this industry, specifically in Cincinnati, everything is relationship-based, right? And so if you haven't read the impact report from ACI, I believe there was a study that when COVID happened, Cincinnati was actually one of the only areas that didn't really suffer in construction because of all of the relationships that we have, and they're so strong. So did I get that right, Jordan? I phrased it right?
The theory was spot on.
Oh, thank you. Wonderful. All right, great.
The idea is that we were insulated and typically insulated from the high highs and low lows, like macroeconomics, because of the relationships that we have. So, for instance, supply chain disruption. Before anything ever went to DEFCON 1, which is the worst, people had a conversation. So it's those relationships that paid off.
So answer Rebecca's emails and make sure to buy all the tickets. Time for our quick fire round.
Oh God,
so I'm going to
go.
give you two options, and you're just going to go with your gut reaction to your response, okay?
Okay, here we go.
First one, I know you're not a Cincinnati native, but it's the most important question that I've asked all day. Are you ready?
Yes.
Skyline or Gold Star?
Oh, Skyline.
Okay. Favorite work boot brand?
Red Wings.
Morning or afternoon meetings?
Oh my God, I have meetings all day long. I don't know. Morning?
Okay. Yellow or orange high vis?
Oh, yellow.
Bluebeam versus Adobe Acrobat?
Bluebeam.
New build or renovation?
Ooh, I'd say Reno.
Virtual versus in-person meetings?
In person, 100%.
I want to circle back because your reaction to renovations, why renovations?
It's very specific. They have to be like historic restorations or renovations. That's like my jam. I did a lot of those coming up through Turner. So old buildings, new life.
You were in DC, so I'm sure you had all of the
great.
things.
Yeah.
All right. Jump back into it. Graders or UDF?
Graders. I haven't even had a UDF, so I have to say graders. Yeah.
We're failing you. All right. We got to get back.
I don't have a gas car. I don't even go to the
Okay.
gas station.
We got to figure this out. It's fine. Okay. Mad Tree or Rheinheist?
Mad Tree. I probably have, oh my God, I have a lot of Mad Tree in my beer fridge right now. Yeah.
Oh, see, I thought you were more like a wine girl.
Oh, yeah, I'm 100% wine, but if I have to pick beer, local beer, Mad Tree.
I like it. All right. Apple Music or Spotify?
Neither. I listen to Amazon Music.
You're killing me, Erin.
Sorry.
All right. OTR or Covington?
OTR.
The zoo or the aquarium?
Ooh, that's a hard one. The zoo.
Working in the winter or the summer?
Oh, summer for sure.
Apple or Android?
Well, I have both, but I prefer Android.
Hot take. Takeout or cooking at home?
Cooking at home.
Coffee or energy drinks?
Coffee.
Starbucks, Dunkin', Big B, or a local coffee shop?
Local would be my first choice, and then Dunkin' would be my second choice.
Do you have a favorite local that's nearby your house? Or when you think back, what's your favorite coffee shop back at home, like in Jersey?
Actually, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but here, I try new places all the time because I want to try new places all the time. But what is the one that comes to our office?
Black coffee.
Black coffee is
Elm
my
Street,
favorite.
Black coffee. Check it out.
Black coffee is my favorite,
Tag them.
probably.
Free
Urbana is my second favorite. Yeah.
I do like Urbana. All right, digital plans or physical plans?
Oh, physical, yeah. Yeah, digital's hard on the screen, you know. I like the old fold them
See, we
and
just
look
had
at
a
them
whole-
and scale them with a ruler.
I don't know if any of you were here, but we had like a bridging the gap between generations event, and like the biggest thing was people complaining about nobody wants to do digital, but everybody else likes digital. So very interesting take that you said that. This did not go with our agenda.
Digital is necessary. It makes it easier. You can do takeoffs and everything a lot easier, but it's easier to see and coordinate when you have it all printed out.
You were supposed to give a different answer, Erin.
I'm
That was
sorry.
not- Okay.
I'm getting old. I don't know what to tell you.
Day shift or night shift?
Oh, day shift.
Difficult client or challenging site?
Challenging site. A difficult client you can sometimes never please or make happy, so
Fair enough. Dogs or cats?
dogs.
Dogs, okay. All right, so that is all for our quick fire.
All
Thank you
right.
so much for playing. Now
That was kind of fun. I like that.
transitioning into questions from the audience. So we've got a lot of good ones, actually. First question, any insights on getting new products to the design engineers to be used or preferred in upcoming projects?
So I'm going to say a very diplomatic answer at first, and then I'll get into it. So suggesting new things is sometimes hard because they're not tested, and you don't necessarily want to use a new thing on a client that you've worked for years and years and years and years. Things that are new that are tested, though, are probably okay. I think what's maybe more important is as you have lessons learned on your different projects and you're sharing those lessons learned and you've come across issues and making sure that you share those, but then sharing them with the design team that you're working with. We just went through a pretty difficult project, and there were silly things that were just like a person to build this detail is almost impossible for this person to do, even though it's drawn and it looks beautiful. But when someone actually physically, like an actual person has to go do this thing, it's impossible for them to get to the quality that you're looking for. And I'll use one specific example. We were doing an interior fit out for a client, and it was an existing core and shell building. They wanted to have recessed base, and it was bronze, like the actual metal with a chemical finish. And obviously in a core and shell, all the interior walls, but on the exterior wall are all existing. So for somebody to physically have to recess a base, they'd be laying on the ground, cutting the drywall because the owner didn't want to pay to do all new drywall there. So it's just like when you find silly things and you find things that don't work, like raise your hand and say something and get it fixed. You know, and as you learn them, share them with your team so that they don't have to go through the same things that you went through, and bringing the reality of that construction is done by people, and people can do certain things, and being able to communicate that and change the specs or change the detail so that at the end of the day, everybody is happy, and then we're not coming back and dealing with a lot of punch lists or latent issues and things like that, I think is really important. I'm sorry, I didn't really answer your question, but I think
it was a good
it's
answer.
kind of
though.
the same
It was
thing.
a solid answer. Yeah. Okay. What is something you mentioned early on that you ended up in this role because someone kind of took you under their wing, right? And you were a little bit of a protege. So what is something that differentiated yourself amongst your peers early on in your career?
Man, that's a hard question, actually. I don't really know. I think that I can just talk about inherently about myself is that I love construction. I also love to work. It's work-life integration for me, which is maybe not the best model. And I was always willing to learn and to try hard things. And when I was asked to do something that maybe I wasn't so certain about, I still took the leap of faith and I tried it. And I think that's given me a lot of different experiences in my career, which has kind of led me to where I am today.
What advice do you have for young professionals struggling with work-life balance?
That's a great question. So this industry is very demanding, but you do have to have barriers, right? Like you have to set those barriers for yourself. Like if you get 2 or 3 weeks vacation or 4 weeks vacation and then you don't take it, that's kind of on you. So you need to make sure that you're taking time for yourself, that you don't burn out. And for each person, that's something different. It's, taking all of your vacations, it's having an activity that you do for yourself. And then when you throw family in the mix, like when you have a young family, it is very hard. I've been doing this for 20 years, but I started my family kind of late. And I have a young son, 7 years old at home. And I try to be very intentional about, if I say I'm going to go volunteer at school, nothing's going to stop me from volunteering unless it's something that's a safety incident or something that's out of our control that's very serious. And being intentional and putting it on your calendar and doing it and being committed to it. One of the things that I've done is I have one calendar with all of my personal stuff on it and all of my work stuff. So I can make sure that I'm trying to balance in the best way that I can, both my personal life and my work life. And then what I will say is when you're on projects coming up, as a young person, there are ebbs and flows with the project. At the beginning, it's kind of crazy trying to get through all the engineering and get everything coordinated. But then as you get to the end, it gets really crazy. And you just have to kind of understand that in the construction industry and sort of plan your life around the ebbs and flows. It's never going to be a complete balance. There's going to be ups and downs. And then during the downtime, you've got to take the time for yourself and take your vacations and do the things that you need to do to recharge your batteries. And then I think the third thing is that when you really do need a break from something, you've got to advocate for yourself and raise your hand. Like maybe it's a position change. After that project, I worked 90 days in a row. I then went to another project that was a crazy ass fit out. I mean, it was 600,000 square feet. We worked 24/7. Obviously, I wasn't working for 24/7, but our teams were. We were on 3 shifts, and we did it for like 10 months straight. And after that, I was just like, I need a break from being in the field. Can I go try some other position within Turner? And then I made that change. And then after a while, I was like, okay, I'm bored with this. I got to go back out into the field. But advocating for myself and making a change for myself, that kind of helped me get through some of the tough times after the crazy projects. So there's not one size fits all. It's all about how you prioritize your life and then understanding that sometimes work is going to take the priority and sometimes your personal life will too. Because as many times as work has taken priority, well, you know me, Maya, I've had issues with, my health and all of those types of things, and you have to take a step back. And all of those things, I try to put in perspective for people is like, in 2019, I was diagnosed with cancer. And I had to kind of take a step back from work a little bit. But in a career that's like, it spans 40 years, like that 8 months that I had to take the step back, that's like a blip in a career, right? Your maternity leave, oh wow, you get a whole 12 weeks off. It's a blip in your career, right? Even if you have 5 kids, it's a blip in your career. And just to keep that in mind that like there are setbacks and there are ebbs and flows and that it's not going to be perfect, but you need to be responsible for your own recharging in your own life and prioritize what's important to you.
I'm happy that you shared that with us. I didn't know she was going to bring up Hudson today, and her son is like one of the coolest kids I've ever met in my life. We had a breast cancer walk last year that he attended, and we were racing throughout the race. I actually had to try. Normally when you race a kid, it's like, oh, it's whatever, but no, he was really, really fast.
He's also in love with Maya, so
We're besties. So you mentioned also that 90-day project again. So someone did have a question about that. How did you inspire and keep up morale for your team to work those 90 days straight?
We did a bunch of things. We really focused on during the day, what did we need to do to support each other and to support the workforce? So during those 90 days, I was like, screw it. We're buying lunch every friggin' day. We're buying pizza for everyone. If someone's doing second shift, we're buying them dinner. We had cases of Red Bull everywhere. We just made it easy for people to be on site. And then we would check in with each other and make sure that we were okay. And really, we became very, very close. That group of people, I'm actually probably still some of the closest colleagues that I have today. And at the end of it, it was making sure that everybody took the time they needed to take. And I don't mean like, oh, you took some vacation. You took time, you didn't take vacation, and you kind of unwound after that. And to keep up morale, it was just, we're eating together. We're out on site together. We try to keep it light. We try to make it a partnership with our trade partners who were there with us day in and day out. We made fun of each other. I mean, I don't know. I remember my project executive at the time, he was like, all right, you guys go home, get some sleep. We'll come back. This is like during final inspections and our health department inspection. I remember walking into the trailer one day and he clearly hadn't left. He had slept there. And he was like, Lysoling his underarms, right? So like when stuff like that happens, you're just like, okay, this is the team, and just, I don't know, giving everyone time to go home, some nights to have dinner, and on the weekends making sure everyone's fed. And I don't have the answer for it, but that's kind of what we did.
In those 90 days, to keep it a little lighthearted, what's like the funniest memory that you have?
Oh my God, the funniest memory. I probably shouldn't even say this on a podcast, but I will anyway. So we were trying to get our final health inspection, and this building had distributed dining. So they didn't just have one like cafeteria area. It was a cafeteria and then distributed cafeteria areas throughout the building. And I remember we got some existing equipment from their old facility that came over, and it wasn't what they said it was going to be. So the electrical wasn't hooked up. It wasn't the same feeds that we had going to it. And I remember walking in with the health inspector, and she's got her little like temperature tab. She's sticking it in the dishwasher, and she's making sure that the exhaust fan's working. Well, they were installing the exhaust fan when she was doing her testing, but naturally the steam went up, and she's like, "Oh, it sounds like it's working great." No, that's the guy drilling the exhaust fan into the side of the building right now during the health inspection, but that's okay. And then we're walking around. She's checking all the refrigerators and making sure they're up to temperature. And then we get to the steamer. I was like, the steamer. It's not going to work. I know it's not going to work. And she's like, okay, well, it's not really coming up to temperature yet. Let's go do all the rest of them, and then we'll come back down here. And I'm like, we're going to fail our health inspection. So we do all the rest of the distributed dining. We come back down. We go back to the steamer, and I see there's like all this water on the floor. I'm like, what the heck's going on? I open the steamer, and steam comes out of it. She puts her temperature stick in it, closes the door, comes up to temperature, comes out, writes us like a punch list of things we have to come back and oh, there we go. The steamer worked. I'm like, that's amazing. She's going through her list. Our general manager at the time walks in. I was like, get out. We're going to get our health. Don't even come in here right now and don't talk. So she leaves, and I go to my superintendent. I was like, John, how'd you get the steamer to work? He's like, oh, I didn't. Did you notice all the water on the floor? I was like, yeah. He goes, well, I boiled the water in that big pasta boiler, and then I threw it in the steamer, and it had got hot enough that she could take the temperature, and then the next day we hooked all the electrical up, and it was all good. But yeah, so that's probably the funniest thing. I was clueless. He's like, oh yeah, no, I boiled water while you were on the rest of your tour. I stuck it in the steamer, and then it steamed. And I was like, holy crap, you are a genius.
Hey, teamwork makes the dream work out here, man. What can we say? We're going to get it done. Promise made is a promise delivered. That's the Turner way. What can I say?
So that's probably the funniest thing I ever dealt with on a site. And then obviously it got all connected and it worked properly, but it was only, the display was only working. It wouldn't like heat up.
Yeah.
So yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is really funny. So I think we have time for maybe 1 to 2 more questions. So earlier in the last question, you mentioned when you were bored with something, you wanted to advocate for yourself to try something new. Early in your career, it can be a little nervous, asking for something. You never want to step on the wrong toes or push too many buttons or, try a little too hard. How did you overcome that nervousness? Like, how did you approach advocating for yourself and requesting a change in your career?
I think I got to a point that, I'll use one specific example. I was in business development, and I felt like I was kind of just not learning anything new. I was just doing the same thing day in and day out. I wasn't going to move into the business development manager position because there was already someone there kind of like blocking. They were young still. And so I think I just got to a point where I'm like, I'm not learning anything new. I'm not excited to do this day in and day out. And I want to be more effective and contribute more. So I just got to a point where I'm like, you know what? I need to talk to my mentor at the time and say, hey, I need a change. And that's basically what I did. And then I went on, and it was a little bit dynamic because at the time I was also pregnant with Hudson. And so I think everyone just assumed that when I came back from maternity leave, I just wanted to go back into an office, quote unquote, position. And I really just wanted to go back into the field. So I talked to my mentor, I talked to HR, and I was like, look, I really want to go back out into the field. after I come back from maternity leave. And, there's a lot of questions about like, oh, are you sure? Can you handle it? I'm like, you would not ask a man this same thing, right? They'd come back and you would just put them wherever there was availability, right? So I am telling you, this is what I want and this is what I want to do. And I think I just got to a point where I felt stagnant and I was tired of it. And so I just spoke up. It was nerve-wracking, and I was nervous that maybe it'd be off-putting to people, but they listened. And then when I came back, I went and ran another crazy project.
I don't know if I should say this, but you're such a badass. Like, that's crazy. Fun little story about Erin. So early on when she first joined the team, I was still doing a little bit of marketing support, and we had a proposal due, and my computer crashed. Whole RFP, InDesign's not working. I can't open it. I'm freaking out, physically shaking at my desk. I'm stressed. Erin's over my shoulder, and I'm like, I'm going to cry. I'm going to freak out. We figured it out. It got done. And literally, she's like, all right, guys, let's go to lunch. I can't eat after that. That was the most traumatizing experience ever. And she's just like, oh, you're good. It's all cool. So she's so cool. That's all I'm going to say. She's so cool. All right, very last question on an exciting note, looking out to the future. What is an upcoming project that you are looking forward to or excited about that we're getting ready to start?
So we were just awarded the Miami University volleyball and basketball arena. So I'm really excited to get that thing going. It's a big win for us because we haven't been on Miami University's campus in a really long time. And sports is one of our main things that we do and that we excel at. So I think that's probably a really exciting project for us here in local to Cincinnati. And then we also cover Kentucky, and we're doing a lot of work for University of Kentucky, and we're fortunate enough to be able to be building their new hospital that'll start here in another year. And it's a big, massive undertaking. So that'll be a really cool, complex project as well.
I just want to say thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Erin. We really appreciate it. I know your schedule is, if you learn nothing, insane. So we appreciate you taking the time to spend some time and share your knowledge with us.
Thanks for having me.
I want to give a huge thank you and shout out to the entire subcommittee for this event today. We wouldn't be able to do this without them. So want to give a quick round of applause for John Westerkamp with Pioneer, Dylan Line with Bray Construction, Claire Duncan with Messer, Jacob Graydon with Jostin, and of course, Rebecca Helt, who we could not do this without. So quick round of applause for all of those people. All right, I'm going to turn it on over to Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Maya. You did an incredible job guiding that conversation. And Erin, thank you for setting the tone for what this series is all about. To those of you listening, thank you for joining us for this very first episode of Under the Hard Hat. We hope Erin's story and lessons gave you insights that you can apply to your own career. Coming up in episode 2, we'll be joined by Jeff Smoker, Vice President of Pre-Construction, and Jeff Smoker II, Pre-Construction Manager, both with Skanska. They're a father-son duo who will dig into what it's like building a career across generations in construction and the lessons that come with it. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow along on YouTube, Spotify, or aci-web.com. And if you know someone who would enjoy this conversation, we'd love for you to share it with them. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next time when we go Under the Hard Hat.